Thank you, Tommy, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be back here in Vancouver. I presented here last year at the very infancy of this new discovery, Bayan Khundii. We had literally just picked up rock samples from surface that had ran as high as 4,000 grams, and this year I'm happy to report that we now have 73 holes into that new discovery, and I'll share those results with you today. So first off, we no longer look at this as a new deposit being discovered. We actually have a new district. We have the Bayan Khundii and Altan Nar projects that we've mentioned, but also a number of other prospects in this 20-kilometer belt. We also had Sandstorm Gold make an investment in the company this year. They have purchased a royalty, a 2% royalty, which we have the right to buy back 1% of. We also have Teck Resources continue to fund copper exploration. So although we have the flagship gold projects, we continue in the background to be carrying out generative copper exploration on behalf of the Teck Alliance. And we have perhaps the most experienced team that's worked in Mongolia as foreign investors since it opened up from the socialist period. We've been involved in this country since 1996, have kicked probably 2,000 different prospects, and have had our eye on the prize of a giant discovery since we arrived at that point. And I think today, it's one of those things that you all just dream about, but I think as we go through this presentation, you'll see these discoveries are special. We've added to our board quite significantly over the last 12 months. We added Leighton Croft. Leighton was a senior vice president with Ivanhoe under the Rio umbrella, and then with Peabody, working in government affairs and social responsibility in Mongolia. So a key element as we move towards growing these deposits towards the production stage. We also added Canada's first ambassador to Mongolia, Dr. Anna Bielik, and David Mosier, who is well known for High River Gold. He was the CEO, founder, developer, and miner of deposits in Africa and in Russia. So brings that development experience to the team. So we've really improved and added some key elements to the board of directors. On the corporate side, our share price today is in the range of 40 cents, market cap approximately 50 million. We've had a good return on the investment since I was here last year. We traded at approximately 14 cents in October of 2015 and have reached up to 55 cents here in the last several months. A very strong shareholder base. Teck is our largest shareholder at about 10.5%. That is next to the management and board that control 12.5%. And that number has effectively doubled over the last few years, so a strong commitment from insiders in this company. Sandstorm at 4%, and a host of institutions, many of them Asian-based institutions, make up another 11%. A very strong Eastern Canadian retail base in Halifax and Montreal. So why Mongolia? The second most prospective belt of gold deposits in the world runs through the southern part of this country. I arrived in 1996 and recognized that it was virtually unexplored and remains largely that way today. We've had almost free roam in this district in southwestern Mongolia over the last several years, and the results of that will speak for themselves. There's been a tremendous amount of infrastructure buildup in this region in regards to our location, which you see on the left-hand side of your screen. We're 175 kilometers from the CA border crossing, where the Chinese have built rail and highway to the border to access raw materials in Mongolia. There's a mining district there, and roads being constructed past our project towards the border. So on to the gold projects. You'll see at the top left the Altan Nar project, a 6-kilometer trend of now 18 targets. We discovered this at about the worst possible time in the last 5 or 6 years. It was October of 2011, so we were starting into the downturn, and we managed over the following 4 years or so to continue to improve these targets. We did drill off 2 of those, which I'll come back to in the near surface, and those are the Union North and Discovery Zone. At the south end there, 19 kilometers to the south, you see Bayan Khundii, which I'll focus on in the latter part of the presentation, and also Altan Arrow and Nomental are also high-grade discoveries in the district. All of the projects I'll talk about today are 100% owned. They were found, discovered by us, and staked by us. In the case of Altan Nar, it is about 6 kilometers long. You see the 2 targets here in red. We've only drilled down on average about 105 meters. The grades, recent grades have been up to 19 meters of 7.8 grams per ton. We've had good returns of 88 to 92% gold, and they are open in all directions. These 18 targets aren't just geophysical targets, they're all mineralized at surface. This gives you a comparison of how Altan Nar looks relative to some other like deposits, Porgera and Kellyan, which can run down 600 meters vertically. We are just in the top 150, 200 meters of these systems. The one deposit we did drill off on the right-hand side, Discovery Zone, is half a kilometer long, but this gives you a sense of the grades. They can be up to 100 meters wide at a gram, have a high-grade core that can run up to 15 to 20 meters of 5 to 10 grams. They are open in all directions. We moved to develop a resource perhaps prematurely in early 2015 when there wasn't access to capital for exploration, and we're looking at a small-scale development. So we did drill off these two near-surface ore bodies and established a 250,000-ounce resource of over 2 grams gold equivalent. At the same time as we were announcing this resource, the markets were beginning to change, and we were doing some regional exploration. And 20 kilometers to the south, we discovered Bayan Khundii. And this is where we were last year when I presented. We had picked up grab samples that were running up to 4,000 grams per ton. Multiple multi-ounce samples were collected at surface. And quite honestly, at that point, based on the nature of the geology and alteration at surface, I expected to see a few meters of alteration on either side of these veins. But today now, with the 45 holes approximately in that rectangular area you see, which we call the striker zone, this is what it looks like when you take that as a histogram and project it to surface. Every one of these holes is intersected broad zones of mineralization. The darker red are averaging 5 to 180 grams per ton. I'll show you that in section here in just a moment. So over a half a kilometer strike, we've drilled a series of holes, and in each case we've intersected parallel zones of mineralization, and in some cases spectacular grades. In that wider section you see 63 meters of 5 grams. All of this material is oxidized down to about 120 meters, so you have very good processing, very good metallurgy, and you can see some of the grades on the right-hand side. Recently, actually just in the last week or so, we did some drilling on either side of this discovery area, and you see some of the results of that. 71 meters of 3 grams, 112 meters of a gram. So good continuity of this main zone over 180 meters by approximately 500 meters. But this is where it begins to get exciting with this discovery. That area I just showed you is the striker zone, which you see in this image in the far left. We've now established mineralization popping up through younger cover over a 2-kilometer strike length. And we believe we're at the very surface of an epithermal system, so we're only just seeing the top 100 meters of what could be several hundred meters of mineralization. This is an example, again, of some of the other deposits, well-known low sulphidation epithermal deposits, Kupol in Russia and Cerro Negro in Argentina, and you get that sense of how consistent these can be at depth. So that area that I just showed you, the striker zone, is the blue area in the bottom left. We have now completed a series of holes under the green-colored area, which is younger volcanics that are overlapping this mineralized system. We have evidence that it appears to be altered and mineralized throughout. We have grab samples in the far northeast that are up to 7 grams per ton, a couple of shallow holes that have given us up to 1.7. Geophysics is supporting the mineralization continuing under this cover as well. And where we have drilled just along the edges of this undercover, we are getting up to 100 meters, a half a gram, some high-grade zones of half an ounce over 2 meters, and multiple geochemical and geophysical targets that look very similar to what we have at the striker zone. And this is an example of what some of these targets look like. So typically with these systems we're seeing high chargeability and high resistivity, and now we're starting to test some of those undercover. You can just see at the top edge of that you have an overlapping Cretaceous cover that doesn't allow us to see the underlying geology. Results for this drilling will be in the market in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and this will be a real turning point. It's obvious we have high grade, good metallurgy, good stripping ratio, but what's the size going to be? And these holes will start to tell that story. In terms of the metallurgy, I mentioned it's oxidized down approximately 100 meters. We have done some basic gravity and leach work, and the gravity has given us 70% recovery and overall 99% recovery on the high grade and 92% on the low grade. And that is a composite from all of the initial drilling, so very representative of the material drilled to date. As I mentioned at the outset, there's road to China, which in terms of a gold development isn't that critical for getting the material out, but critical to getting your plant and equipment in. So we would expect to be sourcing that plant and equipment from China. We also have a very large porphyry copper moly deposit that we've drilled off previously. And one of the benefits of that is we've already drilled off a large water basin in the area. So the water is established, and there is an electrical power grid now brought into the nearby town. So where are we going? We've just had some of the top experts in the field of epithermal gold deposits visit the site. We had Jeffrey Hedenquist, who's probably one of the top 2 experts in this type of gold deposit, visit the site. We have a better understanding of how we can target our drilling. Drilling started September 5th. We have 21 additional holes currently in the lab that we'll have results for in a couple of batches over the coming weeks. The real key right now is to get our arms around the size of both of these systems. They are wide open in all directions at depth and along strike, and the focus of the drilling over the next couple of months will be to do that, test those limits. As we get into 2017, we will start to do resource drilling, move towards the necessary studies to establish our mining license, and get into the scoping and feasibility studies. I believe our location in Mongolia is one of the best to develop gold deposits. We are in the lowest population density spot in the world. We don't have any water issues. We do have a supportive community, and the attributes of Bayan Khundii in particular are spectacular for an open pit development. So why Erdene? You have an early opportunity at exactly the right time in the cycle. We're just beginning to develop what I believe will be one of the top new discoveries globally. We have 100% interest in all of these projects. High grade, as you know, grade drives these discoveries. It's at surface. The metallurgy looks good. We've got an experienced team in Mongolia and a good location relative to being in Mongolia for bringing in that plant and equipment. Thank you very much.